But we had one strange incident happen. We were having a quote, a revival during the weekday, but this happened to be on Sunday night. And Dad would always drive a big old truck to church, and along the way he would pick up anyone, and he would notify them before, I am going to take a load to the church on Sunday night. Would y'all like to go? And if people wanted to go, they would be standing out on the roadway. He would pick them up, and then us children. By then we had Wendell, and he was the youngest of the five of us, and and Wendell was such a good kid, even growing up. He was never a troublemaker or anything, but we kids sat together, and after church, of course, it was pandemonium, and kids running out, and the mother and daddy usually always said, well, now you all take care of Wendell, you know, he was the youngest, and we need to watch out for him. So they just go out, everybody gets in the truck and leaves. And Dad would always say, is everybody here? And everybody would say, we're here, Mr. Roy. And it would be blacks mixed also. And so we got home, and it was just us 5, 6, 7, just us 7. And someone said, where's Wendell? He was the youngest, you know, probably 2 years old.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you have him up front? We thought you had him up front. Well, we thought you had him in the back. We didn't have a little baby brother, you know. Well, somehow, I don't know, no phones or anything. Dad got a hold of somebody, jumped in the truck, ran back, got a hold of the janitor or the pastor, went back in the church. Everybody was gone. The church was dark, big, scary, you know, to a child. Went into where we were. Here Wendell was sleeping on the church, just like this, never been disturbed, never wakes up or anything.
He was sleeping in the pew?
He was sleeping in the pew, stretched out on the pew, which was very common in those, because our services went long and children got tired. So,
have you ever told Shirley this story?
Oh yeah, they know, they all, they remember it all.
Oh man. All right, let me ask you this. Let's go to church on Sunday morning, and after church, you know, typically we think of Sunday noon lunch. Let's go home, your Sunday noon lunch with a big family like that.
Yeah, it was usually a one-pot lunch.
Right.
You know, Mom had put it on or made a roast on Saturday, and we ate well on Sunday.
Yeah.
We always ate well, and she always had baked coconut cake, which was part of the family's secret, and she always made lots of tea cakes. We called them tea cakes. They were simply sugar cookies about this big around. And she always kept a pillow cover full of those around for dessert. And dessert would always be canned fruit. Peaches are very healthy.
Yeah.
But our everyday Sunday dinners were a big thing. And you could ask anybody to go home with you, and it was okay. You didn't have to get permission.
Did y'all have other Walkers or Bradfords that was living around the area?
All the Walkers lived around our area.
Yeah.
The Bradfords lived in Kansas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay, so we're up in, let's say, the mid 30s now, and we're probably right in the teeth of depression. And we got a crippled dad, Nita.
Yeah.
Got a crippled dad. Got a mom with 5 little kids. How in the world did our family survive back in those years in the heart of depression around the entire country of the United States?
The only way that I can explain it is that we had a strong faith.
Yep.
And we adhered to the principles that we had learned to help one another.
Yeah.
And because of the hard times, and people were dying from starvation.
Literally?
Literally dying, especially the indigent people, the people that really were very, very poor and didn't have anyone to care for them. There was a lot of illness during this time because the lack of medicine. But Mother always fed us healthy. and there was always food to combat any
Yeah.
sicknesses
Yeah.
that came along. But
So Dad just kind of eked out a living.
Dad kind of eked out a living, and by this time he had had lots and lots and lots of medical hospital stays.
Yeah.
He would be gone for 3 months to Little Rock, as high as 3 months to Little Rock. For what they did, I don't know. For either another surgery, a skin graft, because his leg was literally broken in two and shattered. Both sides were shattered into little splinters. And he begged them not to take that leg off, which they did not. But he just wanted to get back to his family and make a living, which he did. And
Somebody had to help you all during those
Had
days.
insurance, I guess, to cover, right?
yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
And I asked Mother. Mother lived with me 5 years before her demise, right here in this house. And I said, Mother, as we reminisced about old times, Mother, how in the world did you pay? Who paid for your?
Yeah.
Because it was depression, and I know you didn't have any money. They lost their house through bankruptcy.
This home you were talking
This
about?
home we were talking about. Well, I'll tell you about that in a minute.
All right.
But Mother said, well, sister, she always called me sister. The Masons paid for every bit of that medical bill.
Now, when you talk about Masons, you're talking about
The Masonic Lodge.
Okay.
The Masonic Lodge. And I am an avid Eastern Star today and have been very active in the local chapter as well as our state chapter, promoting the Eastern Star principles, which is the same
As the Masons.
as the Masons, and that is to help people.
Well, how in the world did the Masons get involved in helping us? Did we have connection to the Masons?
We had connection with the Masons because my father, when I was born, 27, he was the master of that lodge in England, Arkansas, which still exists to this day.
Okay.
But the ones who are holding it together are blood relatives of my mother's.
Oh, okay.
And so my mother too was an Eastern Star and was very active as long as she could be, and that was quite a while. I can remember her getting dressed up in a white gown every time, a long gown, what we call a formal, and would go to these meetings, and I thought, oh, one day I want to be like Mother.
Yeah.
And that was back in the 30s
That
when
was,
she was doing this?
oh yes, that
Yeah.
was in the 30s.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether she was an Eastern Star when Dad was a Mason, but I have a little gold pen upstairs and scrolled, and it had a Masonic emblem hanging down from it. And I'm not touting Masonry particularly,
well, that's it.
but I'm because of the help that they gave Mother and Daddy, I have a soft spot, and I know they do philanthropic work all over the nation, as we well know through the Shriners.
Well, Larry,
But-
I didn't know that Mom was Eastern Star.
I didn't either.
That's the first
I
time
think
I've
it's
ever
first
heard
time.
of
Well,
it.
that's right.
Yeah,
And she was a beautiful woman,
Yeah.
and
Her white flowing gown.
and her white flowing gown.
Yeah.
And I used to play in that gown, play house in that gown after she.
All right, so let's move up through the middle 30s now, and let's come to the end of the 30s. You all are still in England.
Yes,
Well, now, how did we leave England? Because there were other kids coming, right? The Oops brothers were on their way.
yeah.
Yeah.
We moved from England.
Why did you move from England?
The best that I can remember, my grandfather owned lots of land in southern Arkansas. He either leased or loaned it. I do not understand which way it went. But it was flooded. It was on the Mississippi River, and those floods came every spring, as we've had this year. And he went north up to Little Rock, and on I-40, which is a freeway now, settled in a place called Plummerville. And the family was with him. The children, my aunts and uncles, are growing up. And by then, of course, Mother grew up in Lake Village, and so that our family had come up there.
Yeah.
And
You all migrated all up together.
yeah, we all migrated up together, and the weather was so bad that I think some other history tells us that they moved the stuff, and my grandparents had a large house. This was back a little earlier, but they did have a large house in Lake Village, but they moved that stuff by wagon and mule and horse.
Oh.
And it was like, your guess is better than mine, 150 miles
Yeah,
or so.
yeah.
And we didn't have the concrete
Yeah.
roads that we had. There was mud roads,
Yeah.
and those wagons would
Yeah.
get down.
Did they first move to England and then to
They moved-
Somerville a little bit later?
Yeah.
Mom's parents?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They migrated on up when the floods came, and we were told to move out.
Yeah.
The Lake Village moved.
Where'd y'all end up when you got to Plumerville?
We had a rental house of some sort, and some of the relatives lived with us as a family. And of course, we had 5 kids at this time, and so we just kind of all bunked in together, and you had a bed here and you had a bed there, and you didn't unpack anything because you weren't permanently established. But we were leasing houses. But my grandfather was an industrious farmer, and he went out and he got some more land, whether he bought it or leased it. I prefer to think lease because of the money situation. But the kids, they had old houses on it, and we moved into one of these houses.
Okay.
It reminds me of John Grisham's story, the unpainted house.
Yeah.
The houses weren't painted, even the ones that could afford, except unless you were in the city. But just a simple old 4 rooms, just like this right here, and there would be 8, 10 people live in that.
So I'm following kind of a date line here. So we're now in the late 30s, probably what, 37, 38 when you moved to Plumerville area?
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. And moved into one of these old houses down here that on the land that Papaw had.
Yeah.
Pretty close?
Yes.
All right. All right. Now, are you still going to school? Where are you going to school now?
Well, I'm going to Plumerville. I was in the 4th grade
Okay.
when we moved into Plumerville.
All right.
But this was in the little town. We had moved out, in the country here.
Yeah. So you started 4th grade in Plumerville.
Uh-huh.
What do you remember about that? You remember your 4th grade class in Plumerville?
Yes,
remember your school?
I just remember being frightened.
Yeah.
Mom take you to school then? How'd you get to school first time?
Well, I just went. Well, I went with the older kids.
Yeah, I guess they went also, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you went with your 3 older brothers and Wendell. Wendell was probably in school when you went to Plumerville too.
Exactly.
All right. Now, what'd you all do in school up in Plumerville area?
Well, I just had the eager to learn. Had a teacher. They also taught the same subjects. One teacher taught everything.
Yeah.
And we had had the sporting games. We had a gymnasium that we took sports. We played. We had a basketball season practice. I was a member of the basketballs. I was a teenager by then.
Yeah.
Or not teenager, but
You were.
through the years.
You were.
But school was just mundane, but I enjoyed school, liked it and everything. And Mom bought me a new coat. I remember starting to school, and one year I was like, 5th, 6th grade or something, starting to school and living close. They were still living close, recovering from the Depression. And you know that during that time, many people lost their homelands, lost their homes and all. And it was, of course, way back then, a little before that Dad and Mom had lost their house in England
Why
to the
was
mortgage.
that, Juanita?
The lack of payment. He didn't have any money to pay to pay for the
Well, we're
mortgage.
probably, what, talking $15,000, $20,000, $50,000?
No, $500.
Uh-huh.
$500
So
would
they
have
lost their
saved,
home
lost their
because
home,
the
and that's why
$500.
that they had to. He had to join in the crop sharing.
Yeah.
Was called sharecropping,
Yeah,
as you hear that term many today.
Huh. Now, let's go back to Plumberville. We moved to Plumberville in the late 30s, and you started school there. I've heard a story, and I'm going to ask you to validate it. When you started high school, you played basketball.
Yes.
Now, you're still a little short gal.
I'm still a little short gal.
Yeah, but you played basketball.
Yeah, I played
Well, you
basketball.
played on the girls' basketball team.
I played on the girls' basketball team, and we had a quite competitive little team. There was two cousins. I played on a team that all the girls were cousins except one. We called it the cousin team. I was a forward, which we played a split court then.
Mm-hmm.
The girls played. The forwards played on this end, the guards played on that end
I got you.
of yours. So they defended us on our end. We defended them on their end.
All right.
So we were pretty hot shot
Yeah.
and got to play. And I was shorter than most of them, but I was pretty quick on my feet and run.
Yeah.
So we went to state many times and played games up there and spent weekends in a gymnasium stretched out somewhere.
You were a forward. That meant that you were a shooter.
I was a shooter,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The guards didn't shoot.
Yeah.
But since then, of course, they play like the men do, you know.
Yeah.
And
Juanita, back to church one more time. Do you remember when you made a profession of faith?
yes, I do. In Portland, the church, the old unpainted churches was the one that we went to.
Oh, now
There
hang
was-
on. Where are we now?
We are in,
Outside
I'm
of
sorry,
No.
outside of Plummerville.
Yep, I got you.
Af-
Okay. No, we're fine.
After we moved to Plummerville,
Yeah.
Dad found us a house, or my grandfather did,
Yeah.
out on his acreage.
Yep.
And we moved out into one of those houses as a single family.
Yep.
And it was close to the levee. We were right on the Arkansas River. It was fertile land all along the Arkansas River. It came right through our community. In fact, the road into the community ran parallel for miles and miles along the river.
Okay.
That was our way in and out. But our church was located on this little road. Most everyone in the community attended it, and it was during one of those little summer revivals that I made a profession of faith and was baptized along with Wendell, who was 2 years younger, in the Arkansas River.
Huh.
Down behind, it was our baptistry. We just walked down the bank, and they would advertise that we were having a baptism at that time. And I can remember that day like it was yesterday, that as we walked out, we held hands with others that came into the water with us.
About how many?
There was about 15 that went with me
My.
and Wendell.
Various ages.
Yeah, various ages, from seniors to our age.
Yeah.
Wendell was 11, and I was about 13.
Yeah,
I was about 13.
Yeah.
As we went in, and of course women didn't wear pants except to work in the fields then. And as we went into the water, my skirt kept floating up, and I was humiliated because I was short. But anyway, Wendell would hold that down with his hands. And but anyway, we escaped without being drowned.
Oh, that's good.
And it didn't take long to baptize us and get out of there. But it was we had regular services there, and also we had, sometimes we'd have a preacher and sometimes we wouldn't. But we always had a big Christmas party at the church with a full-grown tree, and they would fix up bags for every child there. And it included the nuts, the fruit, and maybe one little booklet or maybe one little item. And
So we're probably around 1940 now, aren't we? Pretty
probably so.
Close, pretty close.
And
1940.
we lived after that first house we moved into, that spring came a flood, and got into that house, and we were told to move out. I mean, they were saying it was going to flood.
Yeah.
So we moved to one that was about 1.5 miles from there, called the Griffin home, the Griffith house. And that was the last family that had lived there before us.
How far were these two houses from the river itself?
I would say about a mile.
The first one?
Yeah.
So
well, not the first one. The first one was much closer.
Yeah.
But the two houses were about 1.5 miles apart. And of course, we walked everywhere. And but
how far was Plummerville from where these houses were?
About 3.5 to 4 miles.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you walk into town occasionally?
Oh yeah. The adults walked, but we had an old rickety car of some sort at that time.
Yeah.
But on the side of this house, Dad had put up a bucket with the bottom, a can really. It was more like a 3-pound coffee can, like this.
Yeah.
He was talking about the basketball team. And Bill and me, Shorty didn't like basketball, and Dale would get out there and shoot at this, and it was on the side of the house, shoot at this can up there. And we used a rubber ball that belonged to our next in coming up. And we got pretty salty. That's why we were such good basketball players. We practiced at home.
By shooting outside of
the house.
A can.
Yes.
3-pound coffee can, huh?
Yeah, 3-pound coffee can. But while we were there, one fall rather, malaria was quite prevalent in that area because of the water always coming up, standing, and all of that. So there was quite a lot of sickness. And Mom wasn't feeling well at all. And she took to the bed, and that was unusual for our mother to go to bed in the daytime. And she laid, and she was in agony. And finally, Dad sent my oldest brother, Dale, said, "You've got to go get the doctor for Mom. There's something wrong." And Dale, who was a almost grown boy at this time, 17, 18, said, "Dad, what is the matter with Mom?" And he said, "Well, son, don't you know? She's having a baby." And Dale just about fainted because Mother was, at that time in her life, she was pretty buxom. And you didn't flaunt pregnancy like they do now. Yeah. They dressed discreetly. Mother wore a corset during that time, and I can see that old thing now that had staves in it, and it just pulled her up in proper shape. That even the men, other than Dad, did not know Mother was expecting. So 3 days later, after Mother had prayed to die with this burden, she delivered this Richard. And Richard's head was so smashed from Mother not
wearing that corset, probably.
Probably so. And it was kind of like a Muppet.
He was a conehead.
A conehead.
The original conehead.
And I said, "Oh, Mother!" And it was my birthday. That was the topper of it. It was my birthday, and Mother had presented me with a baby brother, which already had 4.
13th birthday.
It was my 13th birthday, and here came Richard.
Well, that explains a lot about why Richard the way he is, you know.
Yep, it does. But Mother, I can remember Mother was afraid something else was wrong with him besides a misshapen head. Yeah. She rubbed that head. She would rub this forward. She would put a hanky around there and push that head. And really, he's pretty normal today.
I've still got a little ridge, right?
Yeah, there's that little ridge. But that was my 13th birthday, and I can remember being disappointed after the first look, you know, saying to Dad and Mom, "Is it all we can have around here?" We had boy bulls,
Boy bulls.
boy bulls, boy cows,
Pigs.
and pigs, and boy real live boys. And
Yeah, you and Mom were the only girls.
yeah,
weren't you?
we were the only girls. Uh-huh.
You watched.
And this
Uh-huh.
was in the Griffith house, is that right?
Yes, this was in the Griffith house. And that next summer, again, here comes the floodwaters up the Arkansas River, and flooded. We moved out. The water didn't, well, it did get in the house a little. And after the floods, we moved into Plummerville, rented a house. Dad would always find a house. We would just put stuff, pile it in there temporarily, make a bed, eat sparsely
Yeah.
until the waters went down. Then the folks went back in without electric water, no electricity, until I don't think we had it in Portland, did
No,
we?
no.
This was in the community of Portland. And they would scrub those houses out. We would move back in them. They would put rough paper on the wall, move back in. This duplicated 3 times. The 3rd time Dad moved out, he said, "This is it. I'm through with this mess." And but a lot of the houses were washed away, but ours always stood, and we went back and cleaned it up again.
So where did he go after he was done with this?
Well, the war had broke out, and
World War II.
World War II, and Dad, we had a friend who lived in the Portland Bottom community that was a pastor, a preacher. And of course they worked secular jobs. They worked other jobs and they just didn't live on preaching. And that was the goodwill stuff that was given. So he had to work. So he and his wife, via somebody else, heard they were hiring people in Wichita at Boeing, and said, "Roy, come and go with us. We know that you can get a job." They lived at Plainview in Wichita. And most of you boys remember Plainview in Wichita. I don't know whether Ron does or not. But that was where most of the migrants came in, because there was hundreds of apartments available for workers. And Dad came in, and first job he walked into a machine shop on South Broadway called Patterson's Machine Shop, made parts for Boeing and the B-29. And he went in there and got a job immediately, and went to work. And he made a couple of trips back home. But when he went back home, he told Mom, "We are going to move to Wichita."